Hey guys, it's funkyplaybrothers, and please remember to subscribe to YouTube. And I'm reading Chapter 4 of an original novel, Piggy Infected, by Terrence Crawford. In the first chapter, he went to look for his friend, but he got ambushed by a infected. In the second chapter, he went to the police station and got ambushed by an infected, but Officer Doggy was there to taser him. And then they went to the car and drove. And in Chapter 3, they were in the woods, but Doggy left because he was getting infected. And before they went to that place, the camp thing, they were first in the museum where Doggy got infected. And now let's read it. Chapter 4. The signal from the walkie-talkie turned staticky, and Ben tucked the device back in the doggy's backpack. He helped Sally to her feet, the infected trapped in the conference room, having already fallen asleep once again. The carnival. Ben had lived in Lucella long enough to know of it. But more importantly, the first time in weeks he knew what he was doing, where he was going. Renewed vigor coursed through his body, causing him to feel hopeful from the first time in a very long time. After he took Sally to her friend, the man would be grateful. He would be happy to loan his resources. Ben could look for Ollie for weeks, and he felt as though he already had, and not turn up as much as he could with a helicopter and a few other survivors. Ben couldn't be sure, but he had to imagine that his mysterious benefactor was the only person on the island with a helicopter. When he next went looking for his best friend, it would be with a search party. Together, Ben and Sally walked down the street into the night. The fog had rolled in once more, as it seemed every night, blanketing the city in the same thin layer of mist. The moon shone through the trees, casting a series of eerie shadows on the ground. The wind howled as it blew, chilling the air around them. To the walkie-talkie man, credit, he had been right. The metro station was just across the street from the school. The two new friends hurried down the steps, Sally hopping effortlessly over the entrance turnstile, while Ben slid underneath. The station was a huge expanse of underground tunnels, a waiting area, several offices, a large cargo room, and an underground storage facility. None of that interested Ben. The train itself sat in the station, its next destination flashing on overhead boards, but it seemed like this train hadn't moved of its own accord in a while. "Looks like our ride is here," Ben said sacristily. "Let's have a look inside." Sally crouched down and offered her palm to Ben, giving him a boost, and he wiggled through the train window. Falling inside the train, Ben used to take the train to school all the time. Now the train was hopefully going to make him far away from the school. The irony of it all was not lost on Ben. He didn't have any to force his way into the conductor's car. It seemed like the power was still running to the train, which meant it could have been out of order for long. It might even mean that the train still worked in the conductor's car. Ben saw an open panel and exposed series of differently shaped gears. He was no engineer, but with his wrench from the conductor's toolbox, he figured he could easily get the train started again. Ben walked back to the passengers area of the train, relaying his plan to Sally. "Sally, I think we can get this thing up and running again." She wasn't listening. Her eyes were focused on something in the distance. Ben continued, "Yeah, there's some loose gears in the front car, but if we tighten those up, I think we'll have this thing on the move in no time." Ben would never admit it, so Sally or himself, but he was proud of himself, not just for his plan to fix the train, but he had been through the ringer the last few weeks. And not only had he survived, he had come out with some new skills. Sally? Ben peered out of the train again, and that's when he saw them. The red orbs bouncing in the distance could only mean one thing. More of the infected. More pair, two, one pair, two pairs, 4, 6. Ben quickly lost count as the infected lumbering forward, the cool air blowing in the front from the outside, replacing with the smell of an open old refrigerator. Ben had never seen this many in one place. He flashed back to the fear he felt outside the Lucella Gallery when he had come face to face with less than half a dozen. It seemed like every infected in the city was down here and lumbering towards Sally. He went to open the door of the train for her, but what good would that do them? Packed into a tiny tube underground with nowhere to go, they might as well throw themselves on a buffet line for the infected. Their hoardiness grunted reached a chorus of terrifying grunts as Ben raced back to the conductor's car, his fingers wagingly nervous as he threw open the toolbox, grabbing the first wrench he saw. It was the wrong fit. Ben saw almost immediately. He could grip anything inside the control panel, and it was just because of the copious amount of sweat that was suddenly appearing on his hand. Ben wiped his hands on his pants, taking a deep breath to steady himself. It almost never worked, but it was worth a shot. Taking a good look at the conductor's kit and the exposed gears in the control panel, he quickly found the right tool for the job. The cool metal handle of a steel wrench felt especially chilling in the sweaty palms. Wiping a bead of sweat from his brow, Ben ratcheted the wrench around one of the gears, turning it into the gear snapped into place with a satisfying click sound. He could hear the cruffling happening outside, but he did not dare check on it. Every second was precious. Precious. And if he didn't get this train moving, it was both of them on the line. Sally had taken out of the infected with nothing but an old acorn on a stick. If anyone Ben knew could handle this, it was Sally. Ben wrenched another gear into place, then a third and fourth, finding that the further along he got, the easier to process became. By the time he got to the fifth gear, the thing practically fell away, revealing the throttle and brake from the train. Like most public transportation on the island of Lucelle, the train ran on autopilot, but after being locked up it needed a manual throttling to get it started. Ben threw the throttle into reverse, and train groaning to life as it slowly began to pull away from the station. Signs in different compartments sprang to life, denoting the train's upcoming stops. The carnival grounds were far, but if they were hurried, they could definitely make it there by morning. Ben rushed from the front of the car to the middle where the doors were. They needed to be opened manually, but Ben could see through the windows that the infected were advancing on Sally. Ben banged on the doors to no anvil. Sally barely turned, far too busy with the swarm of infected threatening to overturn her. Latching his wrench on to the door manual controls, he twisted with all his might, managing to open the doors just enough for Sally to join him on the train. "Sally, come on, the train is leaving." Thwack, another acorn arrow right between the eyes of the infected Sally's aim was always true. Her bolts seemed to always hit one of the creatures, stunning them for several long seconds before they recovered and resumed their assault. Maybe the acorns weren't stunning them at all, and the infected were just as impressed and bewildered as Ben was. Sally turned to Ben, and he knew what she was going to say before she opened her mouth. "You go on without me. I'll hold them off." Ben was horrified by the notion. "Are you kidding me? Come on." Sally reloaded her bow with another acorn from Officer Doggy's bag. "Ben, one of those things got me back at the school. You know it, and I know it. But you can still go on. You can still make it if you can find survivors. You can find your friend." It was until now that Ben realized just how pale Sally was starting to look. The rosy spot on her cheeks were turning sunken, and she appeared sweaty. Looking at her closely, she was certainly much calmer than she had been, ever more than when they had left the school. Her hands trembled as she raised her bow again, scoring a hit on the infected raccoon regardless. Look, there's something you need to know about the person you've been talking to," Sally started, but Ben cut her off. "You can tell me on the train," Ben insisted, but Sally had already made up her mind. "No, you have to go without me. I'll stay back and hold off those monsters for as long as I can." He could tell that there was no use arguing with her. "Well, goodbye, Sally. We said see you later, but that seemed cruel." In truth, he did not know. "Good luck, Ben." Sally trailed off as he raised her bow once more, tearing himself away. Ben used the wrench once more, twisting the train door shut as it began to pick up speed, pulling away from the station. In the distance, he watched Sally get smaller and smaller until she has nothing but a speck in a background of glowing red eyes. Ben's eyes began to well. His family, Ollie, Officer Doggy, now Sally. How many people, how many friends was Ben going to lose to this? He dug around in Officer Doggy's backpack for the walkie-talkie. Whoever this man was, he was expecting Ben to show up with an old friend. Ben wanted to warn him before he arrived. He would hate to have the man's expectations shattered upon arrival. "Sir, this is Ben. Come in, sir." The plastic device whined with feed back almost immediately, and Ben remembered that even if he wasn't far outside the area where this thing was normally being used, he was certainly in an underground tunnel. He would have to wait until he could make it above ground. Ben made his way to the middle of the train, checking the car for any infected stowaways before throwing Doggy's bag on the seat and lying across the opposite row. He tried to think back to the last time he had gotten a full night's sleep. Maybe the first night in the woods. He had been so exhausted that he had simply passed out, and what had Sally been trying to tell him about her friend was all not what it seemed, with the mysterious man on the other side of the end of the walkie-talkie. The question plunged his mind as he lay on the cool plastic seat until the gentle rocking of the train lulled him to sleep. Ben couldn't have described any of his dreams for the last few nights. The fact that he spent his evenings running from infected versions of his former friends and neighbors was surreal enough for him. He usually dismissed his dreams as soon as he woke. Tonight he dreamed about Sally, his fervent wishes for her to be okay manifesting in his subconscious. Who was this man on the other end of the walkie-talkie? The question tumbled and turned in his head, and Ben imagined every possibility, every kind of person the man could be, but still felt like he was missing something. Still, he would meet the man in the morning and finally get some answers to his questions. Ben knew that the man would have answers. He just didn't know how or why. He intended to find out, though. He wouldn't let Sally's and Officer Doggy's sacrifices be in vain. Readjusting himself, Ben went back to sleep. A wise choice. Ben's adventure wasn't over yet, and he would need the rest. Ben didn't wake until the next evening, when the train dinged loudly, lurching to the stop of the carnival grounds. This was the last stop on the train line, and hopefully the last stop of Ben's journey. A journey that had started all that time ago outside Ollie's house. Ben grabbed the conductor's wrench, now his for an intendance and purposes. He didn't see the conductor coming back for it, and ratcheted the door once again. The Metro Carnival ground stop was nowhere near as nice as the one in the city center, but it also didn't seem to have been ravaged by an army of infected. You took the little victories where you could find them. Decorated signs depicting high-flying trapeze acts, colorfully painted clowns, and the iconic Big Top circus image were plastered all over the metro station, big blocky arrows pointing in the direction of the carnival grounds. Ben exited the train, throwing Officer Doggy's bag over his shoulder and tucking the wrench into his pocket. He followed the signs above ground, moving through the turnstile and continuing up the stairs. The trip had taken longer than he thought, the sun having set over the mountains. "You'd better be ready, sir," Ben thought to himself, steeled with resolve. "I'm coming for you." The night air blew lightly over Ben's skin, causing him to pull his now torn and dirty blue hoodie closer around his shoulder. Tap, 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 tap. A red and green eye floating in the darkness. Ben had been running for his life long enough to recognize the sound of approaching footsteps. He pulled his wrench from his pocket and brandished it like a weapon. Sure, it wasn't as impressive as a crossbow, but as someone who had taken more than his fair share of bumps to the noggin since his adventure had begun, Ben knew that evening if it wasn't the flashiest weapon, it could still make a lasting impression. The footsteps stomped just out of sight, hiding in one of the shadows casting by the big tent that housed the main act of the carnival. Ben held a hand to his eyes, trying to get a better look. "Hey," Ben shouted toward the shadows. "I'm here too." Ben trailed off as the source of the footsteps out of the shadows. He was a white badger, roughly Ben's own height, in a pressed white shirt and bright red tie, and a pair of dark gray slacks. In his arms, the badger carried a large vial, its contents glowing almost hypnotically. Ben backed away from him, still holding the wrench defensively. Who are you?" Ben asked. He didn't claim to possess his Doggy's advanced detective skills, but clearly this person was not the elusive one. Person on the other end of the walkie-talkie, another voice called back from within the shadows. "Badgie, are they infected?" "I don't think so," yelled back the one they called Badgie, not taking his eyes off Ben, who was, to his credit, still brandishing a plumber's tool like a weapon. "The infected don't speak, Billy." "Right, I knew that." Came the reply from the other voice of footsteps, joined in his partner in the light. A little taller than Badgie, the one called Billy was a bull, wearing a stripped yellow vest and a pair of orange pants. Between his dark gray horns sat a small yellow hard hat. He looked like the kind of bull who spent a lot of his time at the gym. Indeed, while Badgie carried a vial of a mystery substance, Billy carried a barbell, weight plates stacked on either end. "Please excuse my friend's jaddiness. We've had a rough couple of weeks." "Join the club," Ben shot back almost bitingly. "Is there a club?" asked Billy earnestly, his eyes widening. "I really would love to." It's a turn of phrase, Bill," Badgie said, crossing his arms on one over the other. "I'm Badgie, and this is my buddy Billy. Don't try anything funny. In case you hadn't noticed, my friend has 100-pound barbell, and he looks strong as a bull 'cause he is one, so that's 2 in 1. I'm Ben." He slowly lowered his wrench but didn't drop his guard. "Are you two here to talk to the man with the helicopter too?" Badgie and Billy made eye contact for a moment before bursting into laughter so hard they had to hold each other to remain upright. "Talk to him," Badgie cracked up, holding his sides as he doubled over his laughter. "That's good." That's a good one. "No, we were out here looking for survivors. What we do. We have a safe place on this other side of the hill. You can come back with us if you like," Billy chimed in. "There's a bunch of us, but there's plenty of room for you and your friend." Maybe Ben hadn't gotten as much rest as he thought. For a moment, he hoped to turn around and find Sally tired and a little raggedy, but otherwise no worse for wear. She would pat him on the shoulder and ask if he managed to snag any more of those crunchy acorns from the cafeteria. His hopes were dashed when he turned around. Another one of the infected creatures lumbering toward him from the metro stairs. "That's no friend, Billy. That's one of them," chirped Badgie. Ben's legs moved before he could form a conning thought, placing distance between him and the infected. Badgy and Billy threw themselves in front of him, both drawing their weapons. "And God!" shouted Badgy as he gripped his vial like a raper in the tournament fashion, poking and prodding the grunting effect with the tube, keeping it at bay. "On God! On God!" Billy shouted incorrectly as he walloped the infected creature with the end of his barbell, wielding it with an impressive strength. Stunned, the infected creature, glowing red eyes, rolled into the back of its head. Ben gave it another whack with his wrench for good measures. The two survivors led Ben down the alley. They had come from away from the unconscious infected. Badgy trunted on the silent. Ben couldn't help but notice that Badgy's sleeves had been torn in the scuffle, his arms glowing the same color as the liquid in the vial he carried. Billy had fared much better. There was hardly a scratch on him, and he continued to lift his barbell as they walked, as if he feared he might miss some exercise goal that had been set for him, boosting one another up. Onto a dumpster, the trio climbed up a fire escape, leading them to the roofs of Lucella. The moon cast an eerie light over the city, still beautiful from the high up. Badgy noticed Ben gazed. "You never seen the island like this?" he queried. "No," Ben answered truthfully. He had never seen the island like this before, and if more ways than one. He looked up at the moon shining down across the city and briefly wondered if Ollie was out there somewhere looking at the same night sky, wondering about the same moon. What were you doing before all this?" Badgy asked as they traced along the rooftops. "I was looking for someone, a friend of mine." "What about you?" Badgy drew his tattered jacket around his shoulders, the glowing arm catching the light of the moon, and the mysterious green shade catching the light of the moon in all the ways. He looked at it wistfully and thought, suddenly remembering a lost and forgotten past. "I was a research assistant." "Oh, the wonders of the science, the things we were doing, the things that were close to." Badgy caught himself finishing with an exhaustion and letting out a sigh of relief. "I'm glad that I can help people find safety. I couldn't imagine losing anyone to the infection." Ben's eyes fell to the ground. He didn't have to imagine it. The infected had controlled his entire life for the last few weeks. Billy chimed in, hoping to save the conversation from its awkward turn. I was studying to be a bodybuilder like my father," Billy interjected. "How did you make it all the way to the carnival grounds?" Billy queried. "You said that you were looking for someone." The question wasn't out of the line. Ben was pretty far from home at this point. He answered as honestly as he could. I have to see whoever the man on the other end of this walkie-talkie is. If we're lucky, he knows something about what's going on with this infection." "Well, all right, Ben. You could at least stay here with us for a little while. Billy offered he could help you find the person you are looking for. Hey, maybe that's him. Badgie and Ben lifted their heads, eyes following Billy's gesture atop a roof. On the opposite side of the street was the shady character from the gallery. A hood still obscured their face. That guy's been following me since before I left the city, Ben murmured. Long enough for Badgie and Billy to hear him. Why? Badgie asked quizzically. Again, Ben answered as honestly as his knowledge of the situation would allow. I don't know. Well, there's only one way to find out. Billy exhausted, racing across the rooftops. Ben took off after him, and Badgie Express followed. There was nowhere for the hooded man to run, not with 3 of the survivors bearing down on him. Leaping to another nearby rooftop, the hooded man slid down the fire escape and took off running down the alleyway. And we're sure he isn't one of them? Billy asked as he made his way down the same fire escape. The infected don't run away from people, Billy. They don't run at all. He's right, Ben agreed. They kind of lurch. I would have said that they stagger, Billy offered. That's a good one, too. Look, he's going into that mall, Badgie directed, as sure enough the hooded figure threw open the doors to the mall and entered. He ran this way, Billy announced, but Ben still had questions. A mall? Why would they hide here? That summed up this adventure for Ben. Every time he got a new answer, he was presented with a baker's dozen of additional questions that the trio followed. Throwing the doors open to the mall again and chasing the hooded man, it took Ben's eyes a while to adjust to the inside of the mall. These were the brightest lights he had seen in a while. He stepped through the metal detector at the entrance without issue, even with the hammer and the wrench. Billy and his 100-pound, 5-foot-long stainless steel barbell didn't have it as easy. The machine blared. If they had been aiming for the element of surprise, they had certainly lost it. Billy lifted his barbell with one of his hands, bringing it down on the machine repeatedly until the blaring devolved into a sad trumpeting sound. They stopped altogether. He stopped sideways through the machine. Through Ben was sure that no one had been in here for weeks. The mall was still running like it was seeing its old level of activity. The dozens of food stalls of the first floor had long since shuttered. Ben could smell the cuisine still wafting through the air. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a mall pretzel, and now he could barely think of anything else. Almost. There was still the matter of the hooded man, who was at this moment making his way up the massive escalator at the center of the mall. Either he was heading for the second floor, men casual wear and Birdie Bank, or he was trying to escape. Billy and Ben made a beeline for the escalator. The flashing lights and sounds in the mall made Ben feel like he was in a video game, but he knew in his heart that a video game about an infection apocalypse could never be made. Some things were better as real stories. Maybe someday Ben would come back and try his luck at the II. at the II arcade. But right now, he had far more pressing issues. Billy and Ben launched up the escalator, hot on the hooded man's tail. Badgie took the stairs, and with an almost impeccable movement, Badgie used his claws to cut down a banner, the hanging advice for Kitty's Kitchen, which began falling down in front of the hooded man. The hooded man tripped over the sign every attempt to free himself, resulting in entangled himself further in the banner. Badgie stood over the hooded man, admiring his handiwork. If Ben had any doubt about his skills, they left the moment Badgie put his boot on the hooded man's chest, mysteriously glowing vial pointing at his face. No, please don't hurt me, please. I'm just a kid. Ben's brow furrowed. Every emotion he had bolted up for the last few weeks, rising to the surface immediately as threatening to boil over, tears welling in his eyes as he nodded Badgie. Using the glowing vial, he flipped the man's hood off, and his face revealed his cat-like features and immediately confirmed Ben's new suspicions. "Ollie," Ben shouted, his voice cracking with emotions. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Ben fell to his knees, pulling off Ollie out of the banner and into a tight embrace. He never wanted to let his friend go. Ben pressed his face into the crook of his friend's neck, letting the tears flow freely. Now it seemed like so long that he had stood outside Ollie's house wondering where his friend had gone. So long now since that first infected had knocked him out and dragged him inside. So long since he had escaped and ran to the police station. Everything Ben had done for the last several weeks. Every night he had been in, every muscle ache, every sleepless night had been to find his friend, and now he had. Now he could rest. Ben's fingers curled into a fist, and he punched his friend hard in the arm. "Do you know how long I've been looking for you?" No," Ollie replied truthfully. Everything I've done, it wasn't a cloint retailing on the last few weeks, but if it would have to do until Ben could gather his thoughts." And that was chapter 4 of Piggy Infected. And he finally found his friend. And I thought his friend was going to be another human, but nope, it's a cat. His friend's a cat, apparently. And I really like that chapter with Badgie and Billy and Ollie, a player. Yeah, I forgot his name, so I'm going to call him Player. But I really like that chapter so much. I hope you all come back for chapter 5. So guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow us on Twitter at the Funky Play Bros. Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at the Funky Play Brothers. Support our vlog at Cash App at the $sign Funky Play Bros. So yeah, more unboxings, more taste tests, more adventures, more monies, and for support, and more reading Thursdays. Thank you for watching. Bye.